In 1847, all of Paris wept, not for a queen, not for a general, but for a 23-year-old girl who had died alone in her apartment on the Boulevard de la Madeleine. Her name was Marie Duplessis, and though she had been born a peasant, she died the most talked-about woman in France. Her life would inspire a novel, a play, a ballet, 20 films, and one of the most beloved operas ever composed, Verdi's La Traviata. But the real story, even more extraordinary than the legend. Most of the stories based on her life start when she was a famous courtesan in Paris. But actually, she started as a peasant girl in Normandy. She had an incredibly tough background. Marie Duplessis was born Alphonsine Rose Plessis on January 15, 1824, in Nonant-le-Pin, Normandy, France. Her brutal father was so violent towards her mother that her mother left her 2 little girls and went into hiding. Marie was really left to fend for herself. It is said that Marie lost her virginity at the age of 12, and at 14, she was sold by her father to an old man. He took her to Paris, a city she had never seen, where she was completely alone. By the age of 16, she became aware that prominent men were willing to give her money in exchange for her company, and so she became a courtesan. She also added the faux noble du to her name, transforming plain Plessis into the elegant-sounding Duplessis. A small trick, but a signal of the woman she was determined to become.
As recorded in the Art of the Day, Marie Duplessis was evidently an extremely attractive young woman, with a petite figure and an enchanting smile. She started off as the mistress of students, and then she met a very well-known young man called the Duc de Guiche, and it was through him that she started learning how to dress almost like an aristocrat. She was disciplined in her self-improvement. Despite her humble background, she educated herself and owned as many as 200 books in her personal library. Her wits and ambition propelled her to the courts of Paris, where she became one of the greatest 19th-century French courtesans. Duplessis was both a popular courtesan and the hostess of a salon, where politicians, writers, and artists gathered for stimulating conversation. She rode in the Bois de Boulogne and attended opera performances. The Comte de Stackelberg bought her a coach, a team of the finest horses, paid for her cook and maid, and bought her a fashionable apartment on the Boulevard Madeleine. She was 19 years old.
Franz Liszt was among her many lovers. The greatest pianist of the age, touring concert halls across Europe, was utterly captivated by this young woman from Normandy. He was touring Russia when news reached him that she had died. Hers, he declared, had been the sweetest nature, pure and serene, unsullied by the corruption of her shadowy world. But perhaps her most consequential relationship was with a young writer desperate to escape his father's shadow. He was very much in the shadow of his much more famous father, Alexandre Dumas, who was the author of The Three Musketeers. Duplessis was the mistress of Alexandre Dumas, the son, from September 1844 to August 1845. Their affair was passionate, brief, and unforgettable. After her death, Dumas wrote his novel in 8 days.
Now for one of the most intriguing details of her story, the camellias. There was a myth about her that she would wear a red camellia at a certain time of the month to alert her lovers to the fact that she was not available, and a white camellia when she was available. A biographer actually managed to get hold of her florist bills, and sure enough, there was a Camellia Imperial, a red camellia, listed there in black and white. So the most iconic symbol of the story reproduced in novels, operas, and films for 175 years was real. Duplessis was adept at evasion, possibly in order to keep pace with a racy lifestyle and so many suitors, and once declared, "Lying keeps the teeth white." In January 1847, she lay dying of tuberculosis at 11 Boulevard de la Madeleine. She had recently turned 23. She died with almost nothing. Her possessions were auctioned off to pay her debts, the horses, the furniture, the dresses. Crowds came not to mourn her but to buy her things. Théophile Gautier, a famous writer who had known her personally, wrote that it was a spectacle of heartbreaking indifference. But death gave her something life never could: immortality. Dumas wrote his novel, which was published in 1848. He then spent 3 years trying to get a play staged, because it was thought too shocking a living courtesan whom people still remembered, put on stage. But finally it opened in 1852 and was an overnight, huge success. Giuseppe Verdi and his companion Giuseppina Strepponi attended a performance of Dumas' play in Paris. Verdi had already agreed to write a new opera for Venice's 1853 carnival season. Once he returned home, he set to work immediately. The result was La Traviata, the Fallen Woman, which premiered in Venice on March 6, 1853, just 6 years after Marie's death. Marie Duplessis lived only 23 years. She had no formal education, no family support, no protection from the law. She navigated the public sphere at a time when most women had their lives contained entirely within a domestic, enclosed world. She taught herself to read, she built a salon. She moved through the highest levels of Parisian society on nothing but intelligence, charm and sheer determination. Her story has inspired films from Moulin Rouge to Pretty Woman, where Vivienne is moved to tears watching Verdi's opera. Every time you hear L'Abbiamo, the famous drinking song from La Traviata, you are, in a way, toasting to a girl who was sold at 14, found her way to Paris at 15, and became one of the most culturally significant figures of the 19th century before she was old enough to see her 24th birthday. Not bad for a peasant girl from Normandy.